There's one thing that can really help when operating your model railroad in terms of the design of your track plan and something that you can implement that I don't see a ton of people typically putting into their track plans. Today we're talking about why you should include some staging on Coffee and Trains. Welcome everybody to another edition of Coffee and Trains. Before we begin, I am still drinking through my Hunter Brothers coffee that was sent to me, and as always I take it black with 2 sugars. So today I wanted to talk about staging, specifically staging tracks and even staging yards. And the reason I want to talk about this is it's something that can be really beneficial to your model railroad operations that I don't see a ton of people implementing. I personally, when I started, did not know what staging was. And now that I come to use it on my model railroads, I find it highly beneficial, especially when I'm running trains. And I'm going to go through a few reasons of why you should consider putting a staging track or staging yard on your model railroad. My first reason for having a staging track is that it can make operating your model railroad a bit more realistic. And what I mean by this is that real railroads do not exist in a vacuum. They exist to bring goods from point A to point B. That's pretty much the point of a railroad network. And unless you have a ton of space, you're only going to be modeling a small part of a rail network. So, which means that the goods and services that you are delivering or picking up on your railroad are going somewhere that is represented off of your layout. A staging track is the perfect place to represent literally everything off of your layout. And this makes it real easy to say, hey, for example, let's use a coal mine, for example. Hey, I have a coal mine here that's going to be taking some loads to a power plant that's 100 miles away, or a steel plant or something like that. And I need it to go off the layout. So you just have a staging track and say, okay, it's being taken and delivered off the layout. So things like that. This is also a very cost-effective way to have things like this represented. If you want to build a few things, but you want to have a few more things incorporated, for instance, if you have a small yard that has goods and services coming back and forth, you can have goods coming from off the layout into the yard, switched into the areas where they need to go, and then go back off the layout or to the industry. So having a staging track is a very cost-effective way to make operating your railroad more realistic because it represents all those off-layout industries and destinations. The second reason is that it is a great place to swap out locomotives and rolling stock without actually doing it on your layout. Yes, this is a bit of a nitpick, but it's always great to have a place where you can take cars on and off, take trains on and off, so that you don't ruin the illusion of that your layout is trying to create with what it is modeling. Nothing ruins an illusion of a beautiful train rolling up a hill like seeing a gigantic hand come in and change something out, and that is exactly what a staging track can help do. Now, some people actually call these fiddle tracks or fiddle yards, where you're actively taking cars on and off, but they work the same way. A place to take your cars on and off the layout, to take your trains on and off the layout, to swap things out is another great reason to incorporate a staging track or staging yard. My third and final reason for considering putting a staging track or staging yard on your layout is it makes future expansions easier. And what I mean by this is there's 2 real orientations for a staging track or a staging yard. There's the one that's part of the overall loop of your layout, or it's in the middle of your layout, usually hidden, and it's where a train can go behind a wall or some fascia or something like that, and it just goes off track and it's right there. There's also the butt end staging yards, which is where, especially if you have a point to point, you have a staging track or a staging yard at each end, and that's where you're going to have places to park your trains on each end once they finish their run. Because of this and the way that staging yards are oriented, it makes it a lot easier to expand, especially butt-in staging yards. Typically, if you're running off of your layout, the staging track is going to be connected to it, and that means that the track's going to have to run right up to the edge of your layout, which means that if you want to add on at that point of your layout, it makes it a lot easier. You don't have to rip up scenery, you don't have to redo track. You've already got a spot that's going out to the edge where you can easily expand. Now, let's say you have one of those staging yards that's hidden hidden behind some fascia. You could even go in and add a spur off of that staging yard right there. And it's going to be a lot easier because you don't have to worry about ripping up scenery. You can be a lot more careful with the track because you know where the mounting points are and you're going to be able to work with it a lot easier. So having a staging track or a staging yard in general is going to make future expansions easier. As a matter of fact, I did this on MRR1. I ran tracks right to the edge where I could hook staging at the time, and I'll be able to expand it easier. Another great example of this, and one of my favorite projects from Model Railroader, is the Virginian. When they originally built the Virginian, they had two ends that ran right to the edge. One connected to their old Turtle Creek Railroad project with one of the modules from that, and the other one just had the staging yard coming off the edge. And then a few years later, they came and built the thin branch, which was represented by that staging yard at first. So expanding your model railroad with where a staging track goes now is very, very easy, and it's definitely a perk of planning out a staging track that goes off the edge of your layout. All right, let's look at what a few of you guys are drinking in terms of your coffees. Let's see here. Will Anand says that he is drinking a Keurig chocolate raspberry truffle. That sounds absolutely delicious. Crescent Schurz and Leverington says that he's drinking Allegro Colombian Light Roast. Now that sounds good as well. I love a good Colombian blend coffee. Last but not least, John Valukiewicz says that he is drinking Erie Island Coffee Signature Blend from Cleveland, Ohio with cream. Thank you, John, for letting me know that. Let me know what coffees you guys are drinking, or if you're drinking tea for that matter. We got a lot of tea drinkers here. Let me know in the comments below. And also, let me know what your thoughts on staging yards and staging tracks are. Let me know that in the comments below. So thank you guys so much for watching. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. They're listed right here. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month, and the link in the description below. Right now, I'm kind of in the process of running by some ideas through them. I'm doing it slowly, of some new series and things like that, and some new projects that I'm thinking about. So they're getting kind of a sneak peek inside of my head, which can be a funny place. So thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, I'm Jimmy from the DIY and Digital. Stay safe, be kind, drink some coffee, and happy railroading.